Throughout the 2020 campaign trail, the Joey leave the dogs on the tarmac and the unlikable, unqualified, unKrustable ticket promised middle-class Americans that they would raise taxes only on the wealthy and not on the middle class. In teleprompter readings, T-ball style news interviews, and even in the live events to rooms of 14 people, they promised that they would only raise taxes on Americans making more than $400,000 a year. It's time for them to pay their fair share. Generally well-meaning voters that don't really participate and or pay attention were sick and tired of all the mean tweets and everyone in their social circle that doesn't pay attention being mad at the big orange bad man. The mainstream media and a bunch of people that don't even really pay attention managed to emotionally manipulate and convince the vast majority of people, or maybe not, that this was the right decision. And if Joey Basement would bounce you on his knee and give you a Werther's original, then finally the adults would be in the room. Finally the adults. A water main may or may not have broke, a person that may or may not have been dead for 30 years, and a bunch of other people supposedly, allegedly, chose this basically dead person, the oldest person in history, to theoretically run the country as a marionette. And because the vast majority of people are easily emotionally manipulated and they vote with their gut instead of research, facts, and logic and picking the right person for the job, they managed to be emotionally manipulated into making this choice. And now we were stuck with it. And since they weren't really paying attention along the way, they missed a couple really key words. Because people kind of forget about execution. They kind of forget about empty platitudes and how when they don't really come true, and then they come back 4 years later and say, vote for me! The biggest, most obvious, and most notable promise was that nobody who earns less than $400,000 a year would see an increase in their taxes. But if you did, I'm coming for you. And because the vast majority of people are financially illiterate and or don't understand the meaning of things or do enough research to understand the true ramifications of what words mean, and also the vast majority of people don't make more than $400,000 a year and they know that, they were like, yeah, get them. Then, within the first 60 days, Press Secretary Jen Circlebacki said that the $400,000 actually applies to families, not individuals. A very important delineation. Which means that if you and your wife make more than $200,000 a year each, then you would be over that threshold and would get an increase in taxes. So it essentially cut it in half. Making over $400,000 a year does not necessarily make a family rich, especially considering what part of the country you worked for, how much schooling and education and how much work and effort and time you had to build up in order to generate that amount of money in a year. And even though the vast majority of people don't make that much, people that make $400,000 a year as a family probably wouldn't consider themselves to be rich. It's not like they're retired or just sitting at home collecting checks. It's a good amount of money, more than most get. But they're certainly not rich. They're certainly not fat cats. They're not eating caviar and driving their Bentley to their massive mansions. But that's just the taxes that are obvious. And the first thing is that people should not want to increase taxes on any Americans. It would be really great if more people understood that the federal government already collects a lot of taxes. And what you should not want is more of your fellow citizens losing their hard-earned money so that it can be squandered on the federal checkbook. They grotesquely spend inefficiently, and they collect plenty of money. If anything, they should reduce the amount of money they spend, not grab more from your fellow citizens. Most people don't even realize that if the federal government was to completely steal 100% of the fortune of the top 10 richest Americans, for example, it wouldn't even cover the US federal budget for 2 years. But these people love trickery, they love wordplay, and they know that most people won't look beneath the surface to understand the true nature of the impact that their decisions actually make. Because the real tax you have to look for. The real tax isn't as obvious, and they know that most people won't look for it. The first hidden tax is inflation. Most people don't even understand that the money that sits in their pocket is losing value every year. And with inflation rates at some of the highest in decades, the money in our pockets is literally losing value by the minute. As the Federal Reserve Bank and the government spend money recklessly, on both sides of the aisle, not just Joe, printing and spending and printing and spending inefficiently and recklessly, the value of the dollars in circulation go down because they're printing more and more into circulation without any additional increase in production. So the first and obvious inflation is in consumer prices and in every single thing that you buy, from rental cars to home prices to basic consumer goods to taxis to Ubers to gasoline. All of that stuff is more than evident around us. And you can look at all of the figures to see how much that inflation is actually increasing now, faster than in a really, really long time. Then if the prices don't go up, then you have shrinkflation, where a roll of paper towels that used to be 120 sheets is now 105 sheets, or a can of soup that used to be 8 ounces is now 6.4 ounces. These small shrinkflation events allow them to keep the prices the same, but reduce the amount of product that you actually get. Or they could simply reduce the quality of a product by reducing the quality and value of the parts that it is comprised of. So they just use cheaper parts that fall apart faster, and you get a lower quality product that doesn't last as long. Then you have home prices. They're going up and increasing at a more rapid clip than ever. Rent prices are going way up. And who benefits as a result of all these increased home prices? It's not the middle class. It's the top tier of people, the vast majority of the time. As home prices go up, it becomes more complicated and expensive for middle class people to afford these homes. Richer people typically have more leverage, and since they can take advantage of all the lower interest rates, they can just buy out all of these middle class people and take away their primary instrument of gaining long-term wealth, especially family wealth, which is their home. Then there comes the eviction moratorium. They can't actually kick the renters out of the house if they don't pay. Well, what does that do? All of the larger homeowners, all of the people that own large quantities of homes and apartments, well, they have the staff and resources and legal teams where they can apply for all that rent relief. But all of your middle class families, people that have maybe one extra home that they rent out, they can't afford to carry all of those costs, so they easily and have to kind of sell out to a much larger buyer that can get money for pennies on the dollar, that just absorbs all of these homes, a la BlackRock and other huge real estate companies. Then how about the secret tax of gas prices? Well, they're making gas prices more expensive by forcing us to produce all of the oil and gas overseas, by not allowing us to produce and drill here in the United States, forcing us to get it shipped from overseas and elsewhere. They can raise those prices. Then they raise the prices to ship it to us because that requires oil and gasoline. So all of our energy is now offshore. The prices go up. We're not producing it here, and everybody pays more for it. What happens when the gas prices go up? For somebody that's rich, a tank of gas or a gallon of gas going up a couple pennies or even $1 really doesn't matter. But for your average everyday middle class working person or family, a 10% or 15 or 20% increase in gas is huge. That increase in gas means it's more expensive for trucks to move basic consumer goods like food, paper towels, diapers, and a variety of other things. So as that gas gets more expensive, the products get more expensive, consumer prices go up. Doesn't really make much of a difference to rich people, but the lower income people get impacted the most. There's a tax under $400K. Then they went and proposed new taxes for gun owners. New taxes on guns could be up to $200 a weapon or $1,000 even for a weapon and some ammo. This prices out lower income and rural buyers where protection is needed the most. And then as they defund the police, all of the inner cities and lower income areas, they're not able to afford protection as easily. And that makes them very vulnerable. That kind of sounds like a tax. And naturally, this is done under the guise of gun safety and reducing gun violence. And even though most crimes are committed with illegally obtained firearms, all this does is prevent legal gun owners, especially ones that don't have as much money, from affording and maintaining their protection. So then people are celebrating these tax hikes because they only apply to higher net worth people. But how do you think those people got rich? They certainly did not get rich by sitting on their cash, leaving it in the bank to lose value, or stashing it in their mattress. They invested it. They invested it wisely and efficiently so that they could multiply and grow it. A common way that people invest their money so that they can grow it and build wealth and earn more than $400K a year is by purchasing real estate and property. If you buy real estate and property, you're obviously going to be searching and hunting for the best deal, the most affordable deal, the lowest interest rate, the best quality house in the right neighborhood. You're going to be using market signals to indicate where yours is the best deal. And then you have to compete with other people that are looking to wisely invest their money so that you guys can, so that the house can go to the best suited buyer. When you use your extra cash to buy real estate, for example, you need gardeners, maintenance, paint, lawn care, pool cleaners, maids, home improvement. You make the neighborhoods more valuable by increasing and maintaining the price of your home. There's a lot of economic impact that comes from you buying a house. You don't just sink cash into a house and let it sit. There's a lot of money that has to flow through it. As you maintain the value of that home and increase the value of that home, it increases the value of the homes in the neighborhood, it increases the value of the homes in the town, it increases tax impact, and it creates jobs. If they don't invest their extra cash into real estate, they invest it into businesses. By investing in businesses, they create jobs, they create economic activity, and in addition to that, they're competing to solve a problem or do something more efficiently or produce a product or good or service that other people choose to willingly buy with their cash. They're objectively increasing and improving the quality of life for people. That's how a business makes money. When they invest into businesses, they're literally improving the quality of life for people, or at the very least, competing with other businesses so that they can improve the quality of people's lives the most. If they don't buy or invest in a business themselves, then they might buy stocks or bonds. Those stocks is essentially them loaning their cash to other businesses, and the money that those businesses use help them grow. They share in the risk, and they also share in the potential upside. Businesses are set out to create profits, to create earnings for their shareholders. They want to spend their money the most efficiently so everyone can benefit. Oftentimes, people that work at publicly traded companies are invested in those publicly traded companies themselves. They are incentivized not only personally, but in a fiduciary manner to do the best with that money to help it grow for everyone. Think of a service like Uber or Lyft. Think about the amount of people that use these services on a daily basis. Think about the amount of individual people that invested their hard-earned money into loaning it to Uber and Lyft so they could create this service that's used by hundreds of millions of people every day, so that they could compete with taxis and other services for your hard-earned dollars. And as a result, we all have this very, very efficient moving system that allows us to get from our house to our neighbor's house to the bar or the restaurant downtown or to the airport at a very reasonable rate in an expedient manner. Think about investments in companies that deliver food. Think about how efficient and inexpensive it is to get food delivered to your house. At the push of a button and literally only a couple bucks, you can have another human being go to an establishment, pick up food for you, and drive it directly to your home. Investments in businesses like that and getting them to grow increases the quality of life for everyday Americans, especially when everything was shut down. That was a lifeline for a lot of people. All of these investments create hyper efficiency, a higher quality of life for everyday people. They create growth for restaurants, jobs for gig workers, independent jobs that didn't exist where someone can work just a couple hours a day on their own terms and make money. This is an overall net positive for the world. If that money was taken in taxes, it would be wastefully and inefficiently spent by a bloated government structure that does a horrible job at spending and managing money. Now, what happens when a bloated government structure gets its dirty, filthy paws on your money, when they interfere in the free market? You get wasteful spending, inefficient spending, overpriced purchases, and you get a lot of inflated business sectors. 3 of the most inflated sectors of the economy are college tuition, college textbooks, and medicine. The primary reason that these sectors are inflated is because the government gets its dirty, filthy, inefficient paws into these businesses, reduces the amount of actual market signals and levers that go up and down for supply and demand. They guarantee loans. That you have the government, for example, spending 50% of all buying 50% of all the medicine and healthcare, and as a result, the prices go through the roof. Then, because they don't even want to let the market work as it's supposed to work, the government will then step in the event that there's ever a market signal that they don't like to make things, fair. During a disaster or a storm or some type of shortage, the government will step in and put on things like price controls. And they'll say, we're here to stop price gouging, which is just the market's natural influx based on supply and demand. That's how the market works. That's how it's supposed to work. And we'd have a better world if we just let it do what it's supposed to do. It's an imperfect system, but it's better than anything else we got. And it's certainly better than the government stepping in to make it fair. For example, when a pipeline was hacked earlier this year, there was panic and a run on gasoline in some of the southeastern United States around where this pipeline serviced. This panic causes people to then stock up on gasoline that they may not need because they're afraid of not being able to have it in the event that the gas is gone for a longer period of time. It causes them to buy needlessly, buy way more than they need, and as a result, people run out of gas, especially people that actually really need it, because people have been buying more than they need. In the event that a gas station would increase the price, people that were going to buy a bunch of gas that they didn't actually need would hesitate to buy it and wouldn't buy as much. They would only buy as much as they need. If the price of a gallon was 10 times as much as it usually is, they wouldn't be filling up tanks needlessly. They would buy only what they need. And as a result, more people would have access to gasoline. All the people that need it. There wouldn't be as much of a shortage. But the government steps in to prevent price gouging. And as a result, people buy it at the same low price they always buy it, and they buy way more than they need. In that particular situation, it wasn't very long before full service was actually restored. Meanwhile, there were some people that were not even able to get a little bit of gas when they needed it. If the prices could have adjusted so that they went up, people that didn't need to buy as much wouldn't have bought as much. There would have been more gas to go around. In the event that that happened again, gas station owners could have decided whether or not they want to buy additional tanks so that they could store more gas. So in the event that there was some type of crisis or some type of shortage, that they would have a whole extra tank or more on hand that they would be able to service these people with. And if they were able to charge more money for it, the fair market price, depending on what the market was willing to bear at that moment, that extra cost, that extra amount that they would get would justify them in making that investment and having the extra tank and having the extra gas on storage. And as a result, more people would get their gas, there would be a higher quality of life for all the people in the area, there wouldn't be shortage, and that business owner could take a calculated risk, make the investment, and then benefit as a result of that risk when the chickens came to roost. But instead, they step in to prevent price gouging. Now there's no incentive for those gas stations to have that extra tank, to have that extra gas on hand. There's no incentive because they're forced by the state, by decree, to sell it at the same rate. So people stock up on gas that they don't actually need, the quality of life goes down, everybody loses. What would happen if they could buy those tanks? You'd have construction, planning, building, additional economic activity. As a result, you have nothing. You literally have nothing. All that would have happened if the government just got out of the way and let the market do its thing. The point that I'm getting at is that all of these things amount to tax. The inflation, the increased consumer prices, the increased prices for gasoline, all of these things are a tax. And all of these taxes, these hidden taxes, apply disproportionately to people that are in the middle class, that make less than $400,000. So the supposed we're not going to raise taxes on people that make under $400,000 a year is a lie. Those people get taxed, they just don't realize it. So as people celebrate these other Americans, these supposedly rich people getting taxed their fair share, what they don't even understand is that all of the economic activity, prosperity, and all of the things that would have happened from those people spending their money wisely and efficiently, now is just going to go straight to the government to get squandered. $100 million of investment in the private sector would go way further than $100 million of investment by the bureaucracy. $100 million would buy you probably what $40 million would buy you in the private sector. Meanwhile, the government has willfully and obviously mismanaged all of the money that it already has. We're $28 trillion in debt. We're spending more money than we take in, yet they want to increase taxes on Americans. Meanwhile, we give away hundreds of billions of dollars in foreign aid to countries that don't even like us. Even just in the last month, we gave $80 billion worth of weaponry to another nation that doesn't even like us. We just handed it away. So you're going to go out there and celebrate and clap for people getting taxed more because it's not you? You don't even understand that you're stealing money out of your left pocket and putting it in your right. Except when the government takes 10 out of your left pocket, they only put 6 back in your right. But remember, these are just the invisible taxes. This doesn't include all of the other taxes that apply to people that make less than $400,000 a year, like the increased corporate tax rate, capital gains taxes, the death tax, a variety of other things, and those small business taxes that apply to LLCs, sole proprietors, and other small businesses. You're talking hundreds of thousands of businesses, a lot of whom probably don't make more than $400,000 a year as a family. So just so you know, there's a lot to it. And I covered a lot in this video, but there's so much deeper. They just know that you won't look into it. So next time you're out there like, pay your fair share, the rich, eat the rich. Just remember, it's a game, it's a trick, and you're quite literally stealing money from yourself. You should never want the government to tax your fellow Americans any more than they already do at any level, especially when there's such a bloated and inefficient structure that already extracts so much money and wastes it like we have right now.